Excellent. So welcome, everyone. We're very happy to have Naomi Mahmoudi talking about disability benefits and employment of low-educated youth with disabilities, with some work and regulation from France. Naomi, I think you know, but just to say, we go until 5:15 p.m. And we didn't ask you before, is it okay for you to take questions as you go or prefer to collect them towards the end?
Oh, it's okay during the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. If there's something in the chat, I'll direct you to that. So the floor is yours. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone, and thank you very much for attending this presentation. And I really want to give a special thanks to the Economic Department and the Research Consortium on Disability for giving me the opportunity to present this paper. So it is a very preliminary work, which is still in progress. So every comment, suggestion, or question are really welcome. So I'm going to present you a paper co-written with Sylvain Charéron, entitled Disability Benefits and Employment of Low-Educated Youth with Disabilities and Evidence from France. And before beginning, I will just introduce myself very quickly. So I'm a French PhD candidate at the Paris School of Economics and at the Gustave Eiffel University in my third year. And it is equivalent to the fifth year here, I think. And this semester, I'm a visiting scholar at Fordham University under the supervision of Sophie Mitra. So in this presentation, I will present you the motivation that led us to conduct this paper, our research questions, the data. Before that, the program that we wanted to evaluate and the data, our empirical strategy, the results, and then I will conclude for our first results. And do not hesitate to interrupt me if you don't understand some of my word, because my English is not the best. So before beginning, I think it is important to show you the definition of disability in France, which is in line with those of the World Health Organization. So in France, I quote, a disability is defined as any limitation of activity or restriction of participation in society suffered by a person in his or her environment because of a substantial, lasting, or permanent impairment of one or more physical, sensory, mental, cognitive, or psychological functions, a multiple disability or disabling health conditions. So disability is defined as the interaction, to simplify, between the impairment of the person and the environment. So now concerning the context of our paper. So we know that persons with disabilities suffer more from poverty and are more likely to be economically vulnerable. And it is more the case for women with disabilities, according to the United Nations, because their impairments and the environment can create a barrier to access to employment and then deprive them from income work. It is one of an explanation. And so this justifies the need for a special protection for them, and more because at the difference to other benefits of social protection, disabled people are not always able to work because of their impairment and the environment. And in order to give them a specific social protection, lots of countries since the 60s have implemented a disability benefits program, which is an important component of their social security system. And in OECD, for instance, countries, these disability benefits program weight about 2.5% of the GDP. But they are quite different according to the countries studied. For instance, we have contributory disability benefits program, which means that in order to benefit from these benefits, you have to work before and contributed enough to the program. And some programs are non-contributory, so that means you don't have to have worked before in order to benefit from it. And some are mixed, combining contributory and non-contributory schemes. And whether or not they are contributory, non-contributory, or mixed, they can be mean tested. That means that in order to benefit from these benefits, you must don't exceed a certain threshold of resources, or universal. That means that everyone can benefit from it. But in reality, these programs are quite complex because they must make the balance between giving to disabled people a minimum resources that allow them to live, to buy food, to have an house, etc. But without creating an inactivity trap for those who are able to work. That means that we don't want that these benefits prevent some disabled people to work if they have the capacity to work, because, in particular, because work is a factor of inclusion in society. But in reality, this trade-off between the income work and income from disability benefits is only possible for those whose capacity of work is reduced, but not totally lost. And these last years, this question of the potential disassociative effect of this disability benefits program is more salient, because we assist to an increase in the proportion of less physically demanding employment, and more with COVID, because we assist to an increase of the possibility to telework, yes. And this question is more salient too, because we know that the number of beneficiaries of this program are more and more important, and more to come beneficiaries, and there is more to come beneficiaries with the aging of the population, which will increase potentially the cost of this program. And in the literature, some papers have evaluated the effect of this program on the employment of the beneficiaries. And this paper showed that benefiting from disability benefits reduce the probability to be employed and reduce the earning. But in reality, just few papers were interested by the heterogeneity of these effects. And for those who do that, they show that the effect is more important for a population rather young, even though the population, the paper who showed that took the young population in a broad sense, because he just studied the young population, taking into account those who are those who are less than 40 years old. Yes, sorry. And this negative effect is more important for low qualified and those with a low disability. There is a question. I think I heard something. No, okay. Okay, but this paper in reality are more focusing on contributory disability benefits program, so on disability insurance program. Just a few of them study the effect of non-contributory disability benefits program on the probability to be employed. And for those who do that, we just find some papers who analyzing the effect of the SSI in America, the impact of the SSIs on the transition from school to work. And just few papers were so interested in the young population, but it is really important to know if these disability benefits, if the disability benefits in general have an impact on the probability to be employed for youth, because their issues are quite important for them. Globally, they are more, they are less employed than the global aging population, and they suffer from difficult, youth with disabilities in particular suffer from difficulty to make the transition between school and work, and they are more likely to be neither in employment nor in training or in school. And a paper of Kay showed that the more earlier people enter into the program, as young people, for instance, the more longer they will stay in this program. So it is a problem for them in terms of inclusion in society, in terms of income, but also it can be also a problem for the public expenditures, especially for those who have a capacity of work. And this question is more salient too for those with a low educated background, because, for instance, a paper showed that a paper of Müller and their co-authors showed that, for instance, for beneficiary of the SSI with a low educated background, they are less likely to work than high educated beneficiaries. And a paper of Gurley showed that the non-employment of low educated youth have a particular negative impact on their future career, because it decreases their probability to be to have a quite good income and to have a quite good income. In France, the paper under consideration in this paper, we have a mixed disability benefits program, because we have the disability pension, which is a contributory disability benefit program, so social insurance, and we have the allowance for adults, for disabled adults, called in French allocations adultes handicapés. This is why we will call it AAH. And this program is a non-contributory disability benefits program. So it is social assistance program. And in this paper, we'll focus on this social assistance program because it was never evaluated. The impact of this program on the employment was never evaluated. It is an income-tested non-contributory disability benefit program. So it is a social assistance program if we take the definition of the ILO, the International Labour Organization. And in France, some measures was taken in order to improve the transition between these benefits, from these benefits to work, because the program is designed as every additional euro of income from work will increase the total resources of the person. And to our knowledge, we know little in the literature about the employment effect of this kind of program that guarantee a monetary gain when you work, because for the program that evaluated a disability benefits, for the country that evaluated a disability benefits program that allow people to combine their income work and income from the benefits, in reality, the recipients lose some or all of their benefits if their earning is higher than a certain threshold, and that creates disincentive to work, according to Kostal and Mogstad, or another paper of Roux and Stobly. So in this paper, we wanted to exploit discontinuity in the eligibility conditions for the AAH, because you can benefit from this program since 20 years old for most of the individuals. And to our knowledge, there is just few studies that use the regression discontinuity method in order to evaluate disability benefits program. But when they do that, it was the case for three papers, they evaluate in reality a disability insurance program. So to our knowledge, this is the first study that used this method to evaluate a non-contributory disability benefits program and the impact of this program on the employment. I saw a question, what's the disability eligibility for AAH? I will present you in few seconds. And we focused on low-educated youth with disabilities in this paper because comparing to high-educated people, low-educated people have expected income which is lower and which competes more with these benefits. But it is also this choice can also be explained by the fact that if we took into account the high-educated population, we will have an identification problem because we want to compare the population before and after 20 years old. In reality, if we take into account the high-educated population, the population won't be the same before and after 20 years old, because after 20 years old, people are more likely to be highly educated than before this age.
Can I ask a question before you move on?
Yeah, sure.
The papers that you're referring here, the one by Kostal and Mogstad, I'm assuming this is Magne Mogstad's work. Are these papers looking at the same program, but just using a different identification strategy, and you're proposing RD? Is that what you're suggesting? I'm not sure if I followed that comment.
The Kostal and Mogstad use the regression discontinuity method in order to evaluate the impact of a disability insurance program, but the discontinuity is not based on the age eligibility. So it is quite different, and the program is different.
Okay, so they're all looking at different programs. There is no paper that looks at the same age.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
No. Okay. You're welcome. So our main research question for the moment is to know if the receipt of the AAH have an impact on the probability to be employed for low-educated youth with disabilities. And from our results, we will show that receiving this disability benefits decrease the probability to be employed for the low-educated youth with disabilities by about 34 percentage points. But in reality, effects are heterogeneous because we find strong negative effect for women and strong negative effect for those who have quite high level of disability, and more for those who have a low level of disability. And with this paper, we think some contributions. The first one is that it is the first time that the AAH is studied, and that we studied the effect of the AAH on the probability to be employed. And there are few papers, as I said, in the literature focusing on non-contributory disability benefits program. And another contribution is to use the discontinuity regression method to exploit the age discontinuity in eligibility to a program. And we also contribute to the literature, which is quite low. There are a few papers which are interesting in the youth population, in the probability to be employed of the youth population, the youth disabled population, and on women with disabilities, because more papers are focusing on the elderly population, disabled population, and on men with disabilities. So now I will present you quite quickly the program that we evaluated, the AAH, which was created in 1975. So to answer to your question, Nawin, there are a few eligibility conditions that must be respected if you want to have the AAH. So health conditions and administrative conditions. So concerning the health conditions, you must have a permanent disability of at least 80% or between 50% and 79% if you have substantial and long-lasting restriction in accessing to employment. And this level of disability is evaluated by a French commission. And you have to ask for having these benefits. You have to, I don't have the word in English, but you have to demand for that. It is not given directly to disabled people. And there are, yes? There is a question? No, okay. There is also administrative condition because you must be a permanent and a regular resident in France. You must be at least 20 years old, even though in reality, you can benefit from the AAH since the age 60 years old if you are no longer dependent on your parents for family benefits. And the resources, the household resources must be lower than a certain ceiling. So it is not just the resources of the disabled person which is taken into account, it is the household resources, and we take into account the resources 2 years before the demand. And one of the specificity of this program is that the maximum duration of the benefits, of the disability benefits that you can have depend on the level of disability. Because if you have the AAH, you have it for a minimum of 1 year, but for the maximum, it depends. So if you have a quite low level of disability, so between 50 and 79%, you can have it for a maximum of 2 years if the commission estimated that during this period, your activity limitation can change favorably, and 5 years otherwise. And for those who have height level of disability, so higher than 80%, you can have the AAH for a maximum time of 20 years old if during this period your activity limitation can change favorably. Since 2017, because before it was a maximum of 10 years. And otherwise, if the commission estimates that during this period your activity limitation can't change favorably, you will have the AAH for life. So what's the typical schooling status of a 20 years old in France? Okay, in France, you can have the baccalaureate at the age 80 years old. It is the higher degree in high school. And at 20 years old, you can have, we call it baccalaureate +2. So you can have, I don't know if I have to, for the name, it is the BTS, for instance, it is a diploma for possible for those who have a baccalaureate +2 years. So at 20 years old, you can have more than the baccalaureate, but you can be normally you can be graduated from the university. Yeah, I hope I answered. Yeah, okay. And now concerning the calculation method of the AAH, just in order to give you this information, today the amount of the AAH is monthly 902 euros. This is equal about $1,000. And because the AAH is a differential social minimum benefits, the amount is equal to the difference between the ceiling of the AAH. I hope it is a good word in English, the maximum amount of the AAH that you can have, and your household resources, taken into account the number of children that live with you. And when you are the age, you can work in France. You can combine work from income work and income benefits. And you can combine it totally for the first 6 months of work. And after the first 6 months of work, there is an abatement mechanism. I won't enter into the detail here because it is not the most important in this presentation, but sorry, it is in French, so I will explain you. So here it is the amount of the age, here it is the income from work. And if you have if you have an income from work lower than 30% of the monthly minimum income in France, they will have an abatement mechanism in the income work of 80%. And after and if you earn more than 30% of the monthly minimum income, you will have an abatement of 40%. But it is not the most important here. It was just to give you some information. And finally, I won't give you all the figures, but just to know, the AAH in France is the second most important social benefits in terms of recipients, because in 2019, there were 1.2 million of beneficiaries. And the recipients are more quite not older, but they are more than 40 years old for the majority of them. They are more single without children. They are just a bit more male, like I think it is like 52% of men and 48% of women. And they have more a strong disability, and just few of them are in employment. So now, concerning the data, in order to conduct our research, we decided to use the data from the French Labor Force Survey conducted by the French National Statistics Institute. It is panel data, and this survey is conducted each year. And it is panel data because individuals are interviewed during 6 consecutive quarters. It is I think it is quarter today. And we decided to take into account the data from 2015 to 2019, because it is just since 2013 that we have information on the health status of the person, and in particular on disability. So, the individuals are interviewed during 6 consecutive quarters, but in reality, question about their health status is just asked during the first and the last interview. So as I told you, we limited our population, we limited our sample to low educated youth with disabilities for the reason that I explained you before. And in order to know if the individuals studied are or not disabled, we use 3 main questions in our survey. The first one is to know if they receive the AAH, because if you have the AAH, you are considered as disabled in France. The second is the Galli variable. So that's this variable tells us if the individual have a limitation of activity for at least 6 months. And if so, if it is a high limitation of activity or a low limitation of activity. And the third variable that interested us in order to know if individuals are or not disabled is a variable telling us if the individual have an administrative registered disability. So in France, for instance, you have a registered disability if you have a disability pension, if you have the AAH, if you are a beneficiary of the employment quota, etc. So you are registered in the industry as disabled. And because we are interested in the discontinuity in the eligibility of the age at the age 20 years old, we are just interested in the population from age between 18 and 25 years old. And in total, we have a sample composed of 3,007 observations with 700 who have the age and 2,307 who don't have the age. So now concerning are there some questions? I didn't ask you, but do not hesitate if it is not clear or if you have some questions. So concerning now our empirical strategy, so we decided to exploit the age discontinuity in the age eligibility in order to instrument the effect of these benefits on the probability to be employed. And for that, we decided to use a bivariate probit model because our first and second our outcome variable in the first and second stage are binary, and according to the literature, a paper of Osier, in that case, a non-linear instrumental variable method is more appropriate. So, just to explain quite simply this method, we want firstly to know if the benefits of the age, we want to know firstly if the fact of having 20 years old have an impact on the probability to have the age, firstly. And after that, if you have the age and so that you are more than 20 years old, if the benefit of this age have an impact on the probability to be employed. So G is outcome variable telling us if the individual have or not the age, Y is the employment variable, so with I telling us if the individual is employed or not. T20 telling us if the individuals are 20 years old or more, and if so, if it is potentially eligible to the age. Beta capture the treatment effect, omega the intent to treat, epsilon and mu are residuals, and F and J are polynomials of the age center around 20 years old. Yes, Suba?
Naomi, I have one quick question. So, you showed in the beginning to us that the AHH eligibility criteria is pretty complex, right? It's not just based on age, it's actually based on past disability status, it's based on your household income, there's an asset criteria. So, in that case, don't you really need like a proper construct you need like an index or a score that determines your disability status, right? I mean, age is just one eligibility criteria. So you need to construct a score based on all those factors that the French government uses for eligibility, and then show a discontinuity around that scoring rule, right? I mean, I'm missing something, because this setup means that the only thing that is varying discontinuously that determines your eligibility is age, when you write this up like this. But few slides ago, you showed us that there are many things, in fact, that determine whether you get access to AHH or not. I can think of lots of programs, right, that, I mean, in the Indian context or even in the US, that all have the same. You have multiple things that determine eligibility, so you need to create a score, and then you can use discontinuity around the cutoff. So I'm not sure. What are your thoughts, and why are you using only age? I'm curious. what was?
Yeah, you are totally right. Yes, in order to be a beneficiary of the AH, yes, there is more criteria to respect other than age, like the household resources, but also the level of disability. But this is one of the reasons why we decided to take into account just the disabled population. But I agree with you. I think that we have to, in our model, because it's a very preliminary work, I think in our model we have to restrict maybe our sample, or to take into account in our model the resources of the household and the other criteria, for instance, French nationality, etc. Even though in reality in our sample, I will show you in the discrete statistics, for instance, for the disabled population studied, lots of them are French. So this is one of the criteria which is respected, etc. But yeah, but I don't know exactly how can we take into account the other criteria. We decided to analyze the discontinuity at the age 20 years old because it is the most important criteria for the disabled when you are disabled in order to enter into the program.
So the way in other papers is that you construct the score, you use the rule, like you look at the government documents and you figure out like what is their scoring rule. Since they have multiple criteria, do they have a scoring rule? And usually there is some government document that will say that, there is above this score, you become eligible. Like there is population thresholds, or, there's a scoring rule based on this complex variables. Or if it's just all of them as 1, 1, 1, then you can throw in additional bunch of fixed effects to control for some of that, for all these additional aspects. And then you're doing, within these you're comparing more apples to apples among those households that have, that have less than whatever income, some asset criteria I saw, I don't remember all this. Then you're just comparing among those eligible, among those sub households, only those under the age of 20 as well will be eligible. So it's like within this subcategory. So those are just some additional things for you to think about.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you have the name of these papers, I'm really interested.
I will email them to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, but concerning the 3 papers that use this method in order to evaluate the disability insurance program, I don't know why they. No, I'm not sure that they use to a very probability model. Yeah. So thank you very much for your comments. I think
may I ask a follow-up question to Suba?
Yeah. Sure.
So Suba, so for now, Naomi restricts the sample to disabled youth, right? And she could further restrict it to disabled youth that meet the income or asset threshold. Would that be an adequate way to move ahead?
that would again do like the fixed effects version. Yes. Right. So if you just condition it on all the other aspects, then you're just exploiting the age discontinuity around everybody who's eligible. Yeah, that would address.
Can I ask something? So if you do that, it's going to restrict your sample size by a lot, though, no? Like if you rather than actually creating the scoring.
That is true. So she will lose on efficiency. You're right. Good point, Justine.
Yeah. Thank you. But I have to explore this part.
And also another concern is that the criteria you use to restrict your sample don't perfectly align with the criteria used by the administration, right? Like for instance, the disability criteria you use, it's not exactly what the government uses to test eligibility.
Yes, because we don't have the level of disability in reality. We just know, for instance, if the disabled population if the individual have a high limitation or low limitation of activity, for instance, but we can approximate that maybe having a height limitation of activity is considered as a height level of disability, but in fact, we are not sure, and we don't have if it is equal to a level of disability higher than 80%. So yes. So I'm not sure that we can create something perfect in order to know if all of the conditions are respected, but maybe we can approach it. Yeah. So with fixed effect or with the method that you told us about. Thank you. And so in our paper, our running variable, it is the age in quarter, because even though we have the age in days, in reality, we think that it is unlikely that just at the age, the first day of your 20 years old, you will ask for the age. So we decided to take the age in quarter. So now concerning the results, yes, okay, we're just looking into the time. I will firstly present you some descriptive statistics in order to present you our population. And I decided to show you statistics for low educated youth with disabilities who have less or more than 20 years old and who have the age or not. So whether or not individuals have less than 20 years old or not, or whether or not they have the age, we see that in our sample, individuals are more men, French, with a French nationality, single and without children, live more of them, they live in the city. They have chronic, they say that they have a chronic health or a chronic illness or a health problem, and few of them work, few of them work, and if they work, few of them work in part-time work. Just the difference between these 4 little sample that I show you here is that the recipients of the AH have more the registered disability than the non AH recipients, for instance, and yes, and few of them said when they were interviewed that they have a low limitation of activity. So this is a different way to present you these statistics. So I will go further. So in this graph, we wanted to show the relation between the age in quarter and the proportion of the AH recipients. And so this is the age in quarter. The 0 is equal to the age 20 years old in the first quarter. And we see that at the age 20 years old, there is a discontinuity in the proportion of AAH recipients. So when we see that since the age 20 years old, there is an increase in the proportion of AAH beneficiaries. But before, the proportion of AAH recipients is not null. And one of explanation is that, as I told you, in reality, it is possible to benefit from the AAH since the age 60 years old if you are no longer dependent of your parents for the family benefits. And after 20 years old, the AAH proportion, the AAH recipient proportion goes until about 35%, and not until 100%, because one of our hypotheses is because we take into account the disabled population, but it is possible that some of them are not in reality eligible to the AAH because maybe their incomes are too higher in order to obtain the AAH. Or another hypothesis is a phenomenon of non-take-up, because you can be eligible to the AAH and don't decide for several reasons to don't ask for these benefits. And now the more important graph is this one. We wanted to show the relation between the age inequality and the employment rates for low educated youth with disabilities. And we find that there is a quite small discontinuity at the age of 20 years old. I say quite small because it is not clear according to the interval confidence that we chose at the 99% level. But we see a small, at the age of 20 years old, a small decrease in the proportion of employed low educated youth with disabilities. And after that, the employment rate increase, and it is quite, it is in line with the literature who says that the employment rate is a concave function of the age. I hope it is quite clear.
Naomi, one question. You said that this confidence interval or the bands are sort of 99% or something. Have you checked? So are these different statistically significant at sort of 95 or 90 or something like that? Or you haven't checked yet?
If I understood correctly, you want to know if I made this graph too with another confidence interval with 95%?
I think so, yeah. Or another way to ask my question, I guess, are these differences statistically significant at, I don't know, 95 or I don't know what standard these days? But no, I would say, yeah, I guess, yeah, whether you have done these graphs here with another less restrictive, I guess, confidence band.
Yes, I tried this week to make this graph with 95% confidence interval, and it seems to be quite similar. It seems to be quite similar. But one of our hypotheses explanation is that in reality, we have heterogeneous effects. So the impact of the age at the age 20 years old is not clear for all of the low educated youth with disabilities. This is what I will show you just after that. So now this is our main table. So in this table, we report the coefficient of the estimates with the bivariate probits. So in column 1 and 2, we report the estimates of the effect of the discontinuity of the age 20 years old on the probability to have the AAH. And column 3 and 4 report the estimate of the effect of the AAH on the probability to be employed. So here we are more interested in column 3 and 4. The difference between column 1 and 2 and between column 3 and 4 is that in column 2 and 4, we integrated cohort effects. So we control by the age of we controlled by the year of the survey. Yeah. And we find that, and we made our estimates for different specification, parametric specification of the function f. And we find that having the AAH seems to decrease the probability of being employed for low educated youth with disability by about 34 percentage points. But in reality, this result seems not to be really robust because it is not, this significant result don't stay when we use linear spline specification for the function f. And this can be, so this result seems not to be really, really clear, but maybe it is because in reality we find heterogeneous effects. So in this table, I just reported the second stage of our estimate. And in this table, we wanted to see if there is a difference in the effect of the age on the probability to be employed according to the gender and the level of disability that we can approach. And we find that for the men, I don't know yet why, but our standard errors are very high. So we can't, I think we are not able now to say that the age doesn't have an impact on the probability to be employed for men, but what we are sure is that it is clear that the age have negative impact on the probability to be employed for women by about 45 percentage points. And when we look at the level of disability created thanks to the variable GALI, we find that having the age reduced by about 31 percentage point the probability to be employed for high disabled people, and this negative effect is more important for those with below disability level. So this results, so the first main result that show that AAH seems to reduce the probability to be employed for the global population, the youth, low educated youth with disability, even though it doesn't seems to be really robust because it is the result is not significant for all this parameters with all of the parametric specification of the function f. But in the literature, in reality, the paper that evaluated disability insurance program, so another kind of program, the disability insurance program, show that receiving this kind of disability benefits reduced by about 28 percentage point the probability to be employed. And concerning the heterogeneous effects, the fact that we find higher negative effect of the age on employment for women is quite in line with the literature, because two papers, even though they are not focusing on the disabled population, but two papers show that women have the height elasticities, are those who have the height elasticities. And concerning the results of height disabled and low disabled people, it is quite too in line with the literature, because ANEL, for instance, show that the trade-off between income work and income benefit is only possible for those who have low disability level, because those who have a high level of disability are by nature not able to be in the labor market and to pretend for income, to have income work. So they can be incentive. They can have a trade-off between income work and income benefits. In particular, Maestas and his co-author showed that in his study, the disability insurance impact on the employment. He showed that in this paper there is not effect on height disabled people, but there is an effect on low disabled people, and he showed that the decrease of the probability to be employed is about 50 percentage points for low disabled people. It is quite in line with our results, because we find a decrease of the probability to be employed by about 52 percentage points. And finally, I will be really quick. We wanted to see if our results are quite robust, so we decided to make two tests. The first one is the manipulation test, in order to see if there is a change in the density of the running variable. The running variable, I remember you, is the age in quarter. And we see that there is not a sudden change in the density of the running variable at the age 20 years old. So it is good for our paper. And this is confirmed by a Macquarie test. And another test is a falsification test. So we wanted to see if there is a discontinuity at the age 20 years old for a population which can be impacted by the age. So we made the same results that previously for the low educated youth, but this time without disability. And we find that there is not discontinuity, there is not a sudden change at the age 20 years old in the employment rates for low educated youth who don't have a disability. So in conclusion, for the moment, we find two main results. The first one is that receiving the age seems to have a negative impact on the employment of low educated youth with disabilities. But so that is in line with the literature, but in reality, as I told you, I'm not sure for the moment of the robustness of this result because this result is not significant for all of the parametric specification used. But we find that in particular, there are heterogeneous effects, a strong negative effect of these disability benefits for women, and a strong effect for those with a high level of disability and more for those with a low level of disability. But our result doesn't mean that because age seems to have negative impact on the probability to be employed, we have to cut it. We have to delete these benefits. No, it is not what we think. We think that this result can be explained by several factors, potential factors. The first one is that maybe it can be explained by an income or substitution effect, but in particular, it also can be explained by barrier to employment because the IFOP survey showed that, in particular for youth with disabilities, they face some barriers to employment. The time before finding a job is twice as long as the non-disabled population. They can have mobility problems. They can face discrimination, in particular, in access to employment, etc., etc. But we think that our paper, for the moment, our results are in line for the need for more supports in employment for youth with disabilities, in particular because we have to improve their transition from school to work. And even though some improvement have been made in France because we have an employment quota for disabled people, because, for instance, all establishments with 20 or more employees have to employ at least 6% disabled people, and otherwise they have to pay minimum financial contribution. Some financial aid can be given to employers in order to help them to adapt the working environment to disabled people, etc. So some progress have been made these last years, but I think that this progress must be increased, and we have to more focus on the youth with disabilities, in particular because as I told you, the more earlier they enter into this kind of program, the more longer, according to the literature, they can stay in the program. And we have to think some measure in order to improve their employment more globally, and we must have more targeted policies. And it is important to improve their employment, the employment of youth with disabilities, in particular low educated youth with disabilities, because as I told you, in particular, work is an important factor of inclusion in society, and it can also maybe increase the performance of companies because some papers show that if you recruit some different profile, it can be good for your company. But our paper has some limits. the first one is those who Suba showed, and you're right, that maybe we have to be more careful with our sample in order to take more into account the eligible condition. But another limit is that the disability variable that we take into account are in reality imperfect. We know that. For instance, the Gali variable is declarative. The Gali variable is the variable who tell us if an individual have a limitation of activity or not. And it is really preliminary work, so we have more work to do. In particular, I think that we have to explore some variable concerning the job quality in order to see if age have an impact on the type of job, the type of contract, salaries, etc. Thank you very much for your attention. I really hope that you understood me, even though my English wasn't really good. And do not hesitate if you have some question, it can really help us. And thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Thank you. I was wondering, does the data you have allow you to think about or look at schooling? Because I think you are looking at this youth at work, no? And it sounds somewhat quote unquote bad, no? It's like, oh, they are not working. But if you see that they're not working because they are extending their education, that seems, I would say personally, like pretty good support for the policy, no? So I wonder whether your data allows you to look at something like that. And I guess I was also a bit puzzled about the woman-man no distinction. And I mean, again, these are young people, no? So a lot of what I think, but I'm not sure about the literature, but I guess people are thinking about children, no? When they think like taking care of kids, when they think about women having more elastic or whatever it is, no, labor supplies. But these are young people, no? So I don't know. I thought maybe it's about getting more education. I don't know why women would get more education, but just a thought on that. I think Suba has some comment or questions.
Yeah.
So I had some questions. If you go back to the descriptive stat, maybe Jackie is thinking of the same thing. I don't know her text, but yeah, okay. Looks like Jackie has the same question. You have lots of differences around the cutoff, which really show that, raises questions about your identification assumption. So you're showing that there are lots of pre-existing differences, like the age differences. Many of these things look significant, so you'll need a proper test. Like the fact that 22% of people are in a relationship right above the cutoff, but right below. But so also, what is your bandwidth choice for the regressions in the RD design? What was your bandwidth choice?
The bandwidth choice. It is the age before and after 20 years old, yes?
Yeah, but how much? So is it like plus minus 5 years in the cutoff, like plus minus 10 years in the cutoff? Like what is your specific bandwidth choice in the regressions?
Yes, it is not equal. It is not equal before and after 20 years old. We took people who have between 18 years old and 25 years old.
Okay, so basically plus minus 3 years, 3
yes.
to 4 years around the cutoff. Okay, then that is fine. But even so, like these differences look very many, like labor force participation, 13 and 34 workforce participation. Is that your outcome or was that pre-existing? Is that your outcome variable?
Our outcome variable for the moment is the employment outcome. The fact
that's not workforce participation.
Sorry?
Is that workforce participation, like in this table that we can see 13 and 34% around the cutoff?
Yes.
Okay, so that shows that employment is very high, which is not so. I mean, I think there are lots of pre-existing differences here between around the cutoff, which will need to be sorted. You'll need to control for them. Otherwise, you can't make causal claims. You will, okay. I mean, referees will be upset, to say the least. I mean, just to think about, you want to add more tests, or you want to control for these pre-existing differences, or show that these differences are not large. You want to argue and defend more for your identification strategy.
Okay, like maybe with the t-test, something like that?
Yeah, or run your same specification, like run your intent to treat specification with all these as left-hand side variables, and they shouldn't change. You shouldn't find any differences around the cutoff.
Okay.
And maybe also add some discussion on the job type, right? Maybe AHS is giving, it's switching me towards part-time employment. Maybe it's allowing me to work part-time, but not full-time. I mean, if you can add more to your story on labor force, like not just employment, but I think that's also in your to-do list, like contract jobs, you have something, wages, like expand all the outcome variables to tell a deeper story.
Yes, yes.
Even your percentage of male and female is different around the cutoff. So, that might explain the heterogeneity result. You have some pre-existing differences.
Okay.
But Jackie had some comments on this table as well. Over to you, Jackie.
Yes. Thanks for the presentation. I think it's very interesting. I was just thinking about how there is a gender, like a difference between the results for men and women. So I thought maybe looking at the descriptive stats might like give an idea of why. So maybe it would also be nice to see these demographics, I guess, by male and female, to see if maybe women have like low limitation of activities compared to men, so they are likely to work more, or something like that, just to see if they're actually different in some way. I was also thinking maybe there might be some occupation sorting that is happening. I don't know, like, to what extent would that be different among men and women, but maybe that also could impact whether or not they take up the disability benefit.
Yeah. I totally agree. We have to look at it. So yeah, thank you very much for your comments. I wasn't sure that we had or not pre-existing problem, but I have to check about it. So Sophie, I saw that you have a question, and after that, I think I will answer to you, Patricia, because I noticed your.
So we're out of time, so but we can talk later. I find the effect that you find is very large, and in a way, I do find it very surprising because it's a time-limited program. You said people can receive it up to a maximum of 2 years or 5 years. I find it very surprising that you find such large effects. And I would, I look forward to hearing about results with other outcome variables, because perhaps it's a good thing if people move away from contingent work with, perhaps difficult working conditions. Maybe the effect that you find on the employment probability is a good thing. So I think digging other dependent variables would be very informative.
Yes, you are totally right, Sophie. I have a list of more variable to test. And in order to answer to you, Patricia, I looked at the school variable and I tested the NETS variable, which interested me a lot, but I didn't find significant results. So for the net variable, in particular for the school variable, but it can be explained by the fact that in our sample, I didn't put it in this table, but I checked it. Yeah, we have few low educated individual between the age 18 and 25 years old that are still at school, because we are focusing on low educated.
I see. Yeah, you're young and also low educated. It's true. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the woman, if I remember correctly, you told me that maybe the more important effect on women is that because they can have children, something like that. No,
I think you mentioned some papers that talk about higher elasticities for women. I
Yes.
don't know the papers, and I wonder whether those are adult women or very young women like this. And I guess I'm sort of saying keep an eye on that, because maybe for older women, middle age or something, the caring for children could be a role, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but that's the common wisdom, I would say. And that might be less relevant for 20-year-olds, no? So I'm thinking you get some money, you say, no, I'll stay home and take care of my child. But if you're this young, maybe that's not what's going on.
Yeah. I looked at it because I wanted to test if having a child, at least a child, have an effect on the probability to be employed when you have the age. And I don't find two significant results. And yeah, it is explained.
My guesses are terrible. Don't listen to me. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
I saw lots of questions in the chat. I don't. Oops,
sorry, I know we ran out of time. That's why I leave my comments in the chat, for whatever it's worth. So I look forward to reading the next version of the paper. Yeah, mainly because I feel like I couldn't get, why that's the job. Maybe I misunderstood. I understood there's no cash cliff, right? Is it like people can keep working and stay in the program, the AAH program? In US SSI, people have to, there's a cash cliff. You're in the program, you either work or in the program. You're in the program, you have to drop out of work. You start working, you leave the program. But in AAH program, by the way, I totally in favor of the French version of, people can keep both, right? There's no cash cliff, there's no even, phasing out. Like some of the US disability program. I just don't know why, why there's a job. Why do people have to leave since they can keep both? So you don't have the answer now. I mean, probably it's my misunderstanding. I know, we are binding with the time. But
yeah.
This is super interesting. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comment. In fact, I don't have the answer. So sorry, but one of my in my to-do list, one of the things is to compare the SSI to the AH, because according to what I saw, it is a more comparable program to our, even though it is quite different. Because, for instance, in France, we don't take into account, for instance, the resources of the parents, and after that, we just take into account the income resources, but not the, I don't have the word in English, but the goods, yes, maybe. So it is
assets.
Yes, thank you very much. And for UTO, is 20 the legal age for marriage or something? No. In France, you can be married since 18 years old, I think.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. That's a huge jump around the cutoff, right? I mean.
Yeah, but it is
from 3 to 22.
Yes, you're right. But in reality, it is this variable just tell us if you are in couple in your home, not if you are married or not. So maybe you can just be interviewed and be in couple with your roommates, but you are not. It is not our married variable. But yeah, sorry, I think I didn't answer you correctly. But yeah, it is very surprising. But what I thought is that maybe you are more predisposed to live with someone when you are at older age than at a young age. but I'm not sure.
But you're looking around the cutoff though of 20, right? That's what, because, I mean, the reason I was asking you this, because these are all related to your drop from the labor force and things like that. I mean, if there are two people there, maybe there's something about joint earning and things like that. That's, you need to be kind of explored that thing, right? I mean, really, what's the decision variable that they're looking at?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe if you're in couple and that your husband or woman have an employment,
I mean,
maybe.
I just was curious because it was an interesting kind of observation. So
yeah, thank you very much.
I think Na is asking whether the data is publicly available. Yes, last question. Is it publicly available, the data you're using?
I didn't understand. I'm really sorry, Patricia.
Oh, sorry. If the data set you're using is publicly available?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you mean by public, you can have it quite easily because you don't have to have check of anonymous, etc. But you have to demand for that. But I obtain it in 1 week.
That seems pretty publicly available. I see. So you apply for it. I see. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Naomi. Great presentation, great work. And we'll see each other after Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you very much for your question and comments.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. It was nice, very interesting.